Today we're going to be covering the biography of Edgar Allan Poe. So it's very important that you have whatever you're going to need to copy so we can start working on it. I'm going to be working with a timeline because there's a bunch of events about Edgar Allan Poe that are very, very, very important. Okay? (1809), super important. You know what? Let's do something way there. Very important, 1809 was the birth of Edgar Allan Poe in Boston, Massachusetts. (1849) is going to be the death of Edgar Allan Poe in Baltimore, Maryland.
For a year.
So this guy's is gonna die. How old?
40 years.
40 years old. At the age of 40. Very important. The life of Edgar Allan Poe, what we're going to do is we're going to divide it into two parts. It's easier, okay? We're going to do it from 1809 all the way to 1831, and from 1832 all the way to 1849. The first part is going to be from 09 to 31. That will be the first part of the life or the career of Edgar Allan Poe from 1832 all the way to his death. That's going to be the second part. Very important you have that division right there. Super important. This guy is going to be a major influence in science fiction, in Gothic literature. Big time. Super important. After Edgar was born, father went away. A year after Edgar was born, his mother died. And she died of a very famous illness during that time called tuberculosis. And tuberculosis is a disease, it's an infection that is in the lungs. And when you have that infection, you start coughing blood. So it's very important. Major parts of the body that could be affected. It could affect the brain, it could affect kidney, it could affect the bones. Basically, when you are already coughing blood, that's your final stages of that tuberculosis. And we know that number one, his mother died of tuberculosis. However, his father also ended up dying of tuberculosis. So mother, father, both died of tuberculosis. Later on, we're going to know that his brother also died of tuberculosis. Mother, father, brother.
Brother of Allan.
Of Allan, yes. Very important. There's vaccines for this disease, and there were also antibiotics during that time. However, If you're a patient that has HIV, that's gonna get your immune system and it's gonna drop it down. Therefore, you are more susceptible of receiving or of getting infected with tuberculosis. Why? Because you don't have basically nothing to protect you, so you're vulnerable. Your body is just weak, and right there you're able to get tuberculosis. That doesn't mean that having HIV is going to guarantee the tuberculosis. No. However, if you are close to a person that is coughing, sneezing, or just talking, and you're close to that person, you have a high possibility of gaining tuberculosis. Okay? Tuberculosis is not going to guarantee you or going to give you HIV. HIV, you know that it has to be sexual transmission or just passing needles with drugs to other people. That could be an infection also. Okay? So that tuberculosis highlighted, mark a start because it's hypercritical for Edgar Allan Poe. That disease, that infection, that sickness. Okay? This guy around 1827. This guy is going to write a series of poems called The Tamerlane. That's going to be his congregation of poems called The Tamerlane. If you do the timeline, it's much easier like to get those dates in your head. He created a series of poems called The Tamerlane. That was after he joined the army, the armed forces.
When he was 18, right? When he was already 18.
That was 27. He was like 19, around 19.
And he was adopted, right?
Yes, he was adopted by a family by the Allans. And those Allans paid for Poe's education. However, Poe got into a lot of problems in school. And then he went to a part that his father said, you know what, I'm not going to continue bailing you out of the problems. He had a lot of gambling problems. So Poe had a lot of gambling problems, and the father said, you know what, I'm not going to continue to bail you out. So when his father, like his adopted father, Allan, when he finally died, he took him out of his will. So he was just basically out with no money. So that's why he had this issue of writing and publishing his work, because that was the only way of him getting income, the writing, okay? He also got to work in a newspaper that we're going to be discussing later on. And in that magazine, in that magazine he had the opportunity to publish some of his works, okay? 1831. He was kicked out of school. Kicked out of school for academic dishonesty, academic problems that he had. What in particular? We don't know. So we know that the early life of Poe was a very difficult one, but a lot of the things, he provoked those things because you could prevent gambling, you could prevent being dishonest in school. So there was things that he could not prevent, like the tuberculosis, but there were things that he could. Okay? In the second half of the life of Poe, he is going to seek a literary career. He is going to go into writing, and he's going to go to the following places: Richmond, Virginia, New York, Philadelphia, after 1832. So in his second part of the career of the life, he's going to seek a writing career in the places of Richmond, Virginia, New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. Baltimore's in Maryland, okay? Those four places. That's going to be after 1831, 1832, in his second part of his career. 1832, 5 of his stories were published in a newspaper. 5 of his stories were published in the newspaper. After this, Poe is going to go and live with his aunt, thank you very much, with his aunt, and he's going to eventually fall in love with his cousin. Virginia what? Virginia Clem. Very good. Virginia Clem. What was the age? She was 13. Around. Yeah, close to that. She was 13. Clem. Virginia Clem. (1836). Eventually they got married. So Poe is going to eventually marry his cousin, Virginia. They're going to remain in the house of Virginia's mother. So they're going to continue living in the same house. 1838. Edgar is going to write his only novel. Only novel. And the name of the novel was The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. His only novel. The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. The narrative. The narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. Gordon Pym. P-Y-M. Pym. Basically, that novel was published in 1838. And you're going to see how our timeline continues to expand. The narrative or Arthur Gordon Pym. The narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. I'm right there on the board. In 1845, he is going to publish one of the most transcendental poems of that era, and it's still a very readable poem, The Raven. By the way, the movie The Raven, it is not about the poem The Raven. So don't think that the movie The Raven is a poem. No. The movie The Raven that came out a couple years ago, that movie is going to be about a serial killer, bless you, that is going to use some of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, and is going to commit murders. And the police is going to contact the actor that is playing Edgar Allan Poe, so he can solve out those conflicts and those murders. That was like 3 years ago, the movie. The Raven, the 1845. The Raven, a poem. The Raven is a poem. But I'm talking about the 1800s. What century we're talking about? 19th century, very important. Everything is in 19th century. Edgar Allan Poe is going to suffer about two things. He's going to suffer madness, when you're mentally ill, when you're not stable upstairs, and depression. Depression is a state when you are down, when you're low, when you don't want to do nothing. Everything is like, you're like, no, I don't want to get out. Madness and depression. Madness and depression. Edgar Allan Poe suffered of madness and depression. In 1847, Edgar Allan Poe is going to be playing at home. He's going to be playing the piano at home with his wife, Virginia. And he's going to be playing the piano, and all of a sudden, Virginia is going to begin to cough blood.
Oh no.
After that, it is known and it is found out that Virginia had tuberculosis. So Virginia eventually will die of tuberculosis. Mother of Poe, father of Poe, brother of Poe, wife of Poe, all four will die of the same tuberculosis. Virginia is going to die at the age of 24. At the age of 24. Yes.
24.
So, when we read the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, in the majority of them, he is going to include a female character. He is fascinated with female characters because of his wife Virginia, and also because of the disease of his wife. So that's why he used a lot of female characters, and a lot of those characters were ill. Okay, very important. You're gonna see that Virginia was physically ill. She had a physical illness. However, Poe had a mental illness. Very important, because a lot of the characters are gonna have female physical illness, and the males are gonna have mental illness. You're gonna see in The Fall of the House of Usher, you're gonna see a female and male character with the same characteristics. You're gonna see the Cast of Amontillado. You're not gonna see no females, but you're gonna see a guy mentally ill. Telltale Heart, no females, but a guy that is mentally ill. The Black Cat, you're gonna see male, female, female, sick, male, sick in the mind. So you're gonna see a lot of the coincidence. Eventually, October 4, 1849, Edgar Allan Poe is gonna die in Baltimore. (1849) October 4, Edgar Allan Poe is gonna die alone. October 4th, 1849. So Edgar is going to be alone. Edgar had a very difficult life. A huge of a talent wasted because of alcohol. Some people say because of drugs. Even though tuberculosis did not strike Poe, if you look at it, it did kill Poe. Because tuberculosis killed the mother, father, brother, wife, and that's going to lead him to get mad, to get alcoholic, to get a drug addict. So eventually that sickness is going to be the crucial point in the death of Edgar Allan Poe. Even though he wasn't infected, it affected in other things. Okay, so basically that's a summary of the biography of Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you.